Hey guys, tonight we step softly into the provincial life of the Khmer Empire, imagining what it might have been like to wake up along the broad rivers and quiet backwaters of Cambodia centuries ago. Before we drift too far, a gentle ask. If you genuinely enjoy this little journey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Also, I'd love for you to drop a comment telling me which country you're watching from and what the local time is there. Let's make this a warm, global late-night chat. You step barefoot onto the soft, muddy banks of the Tonle Sap, the river stretching wide and lazy before you. The air smells faintly of damp earth, fish scales, and the sharp sweetness of nearby ripening fruits. A small wooden boat drifts toward you, a fisherman's net half draped over the side, dripping water that glints like tiny crystals in the first morning light. He nods at you, a toothy grin, and you realize the entire village depends on this watery highway for life, travel, trade, and food. You probably won't survive if you tried swimming here without asking first, but it's oddly calming to watch the rhythm of their labor. Along the bank, women move gracefully with baskets balanced on their heads, carrying vegetables, rice, or freshly caught fish. Children splash in shallow pools, squealing as tiny river fish dart around their ankles. The smell of smoke curls from a distant hearth, mixing with the earthy aroma of damp reeds. Historians still argue whether most villages operated primarily on communal work schedules or more independent family routines. But what's clear is that early mornings are sacred, and almost everyone moves like clockwork along this watery artery. A curious tidbit: some villagers used to rub a paste made from crushed crocodile dung on their skin, claiming it repelled insects. Don't ask me how well it worked, but it's a reminder that practical life here often bordered on the bizarre. Men and women alike pause to greet travelers or exchange news, a subtle network of social bonds glimmering like sun on the water. You notice tiny shrines tucked near large trees, offering incense to river spirits, their smoke curling lazily into the rising sun. Boats creak, nets splash, and the villagers' laughter echoes over the water as you wander further. You might spot a water buffalo patiently pulling a plough along the rice field edges, or a duck herded by a giggling child. The soundscape is rich, birds calling, the slap of oars, and the quiet hum of insects. You inhale deeply, tasting the mixture of sweat, smoke, and river freshness, feeling the heartbeat of provincial life here. The day unfolds slowly but purposefully, each action linked to survival and community, from the way water is managed to the timing of meals. By mid-morning, the riverside becomes a stage of endless motion. Men ferry supplies to distant villages, while women prepare rice and fish near the banks. Children dart around like sparks of sunlight, learning the flow of life from their elders. Occasionally, a merchant will arrive, balancing wares on a simple raft, bringing spices, cloth, or metal tools. Tiny glimpses of a broader empire reaching into these provincial backwaters. The balance between work, ritual, and leisure is delicate, often dictated by the water's rise and fall. Us and locals read its signals with uncanny precision. And then, as the sun climbs higher, a quiet understanding settles over you. This life, so simple, so woven with nature, is also complex in its rhythms. Villagers gauge their days by tides, fish migrations, and seasonal cycles, all while maintaining social bonds that could seem invisible to an outsider. You feel the pulse of a community entirely shaped by its environment, and yet deeply human in its quirks, jokes, and gentle absurdities. Remember the crocodile dung sunscreen? It's one of many small surprises tucked into everyday survival here. You sit by the riverbank for a moment, letting the sounds, smells, and sights wash over you. Each splash, each voice, each drifting leaf tells a story of a life balanced between the predictable and the strange, the sacred and the mundane. Provincial life along the Khmer rivers isn't loud or grand, but it has a quiet magic, one that hums in the undercurrent of daily routines, connecting you to villagers who, despite centuries of distance, share the same sun, river, and sky. You follow a narrow, muddy path from the riverbank into the vast green expanse of rice fields, the paddies stretching farther than your eyes can track, shimmering like liquid emerald under the rising sun. The smell of wet earth rises with each step, mixed with the faint, sweet scent of young rice shoots. Water trickles in carefully dug channels, feeding every inch of the field. You notice the meticulous way villagers guide it, adjusting small wooden gates and bamboo spouts. This is hydraulic engineering centuries ahead of its time, yet done with hands, not machines. Historians still argue whether these systems were centrally planned by the empire or emerged more organically from local village knowledge. But either way, you can't help marveling at the ingenuity. A farmer wades through the shallow water, mud sucking gently at his bare feet, planting seedlings with a rhythm that seems almost musical. You try to mirror his motions, but your arms feel clumsy, your feet slippery. He chuckles at your efforts, shaking his head, clearly amused by the outsider struggling with what he's done since childhood. Children laugh nearby, chasing each other between dikes, splashing water onto each other's backs and onto the occasional passing water buffalo. One particularly daring child tips over a small wooden canoe, eliciting squeals from a sister who dives in to save it. You secretly admire their fearless playfulness and ability to navigate the fields as easily as the adults. Fertilizer here isn't just compost. Some villages experimented with mixtures of ash, crushed shells, and, yes, occasionally fish entrails, hoping to coax better yields. You wrinkle your nose at the smell, but can't help noticing how lush the rice grows in these oddly pungent plots. Seasonal floods bring both bounty and risk, and villagers read the water like a living calendar, predicting planting and harvest times with uncanny precision. You watch as an older woman lifts a bamboo basket of seedlings, balancing it expertly on her hip, while speaking quietly to a neighbour. Her movements are small lessons in endurance and grace. By late morning, the fields become alive with more motion. Men walk along the edges, planting, or checking water levels or guiding oxen pulling ploughs. You hear the occasional thud of a foot striking mud, a soft splash as a tiny fish jumps, and the low grunt of water buffalo submerged to their bellies. The pace feels slower than a city street, yet there's an intensity here you can sense in your bones. Quirky tidbit. Some farmers believe that talking to rice plants, or even singing to them, help them grow better. You can't help humming a note yourself, just to see if the seedlings respond, and the farmer raises a single eyebrow at your strange ritual. Lunch is a brief affair. Rice cakes, small fish, and foraged greens, eaten by the water's edge while watching the sun shift above. Smoke from distant cooking fires curls toward you, carrying smells of lemongrass and fermented fish paste. Children pause in their games to nibble at snacks, balancing on the slippery dikes. You note the symmetry in life here. Every action, from watering fields to sharing meals, is connected. The rice fields aren't just food sources. They are calendars, classrooms, and community hubs, all rolled into one. Afternoon brings the sun higher, shadows shrinking, and the fields glistening like jewels. You trail a water channel to a small sluice, seeing how villagers redirect excess floodwater with precision. Birds swoop down, catching fish stirred by the flowing water, and you realize every part of this ecosystem, the plants, animals, humans, is in constant dialogue. Farmers pause to rest in the shade, their laughter and chatter forming a quiet soundtrack to the ongoing work. Remember the singing rice? Somehow, the fields almost seem to hum back at you, alive with motion and sound. As the day moves toward evening, villagers start gathering tools, checking nets, and guiding livestock back to shelters. The sun bathes the paddies in gold, the water reflecting streaks of pink and orange. You take a deep breath of warm, humid air, smelling the faint sweetness of soil and water, letting your legs sink slightly into the mud. It's tiring, yes, but you feel an unexpected peace in the rhythm here. The Khmer Provincial Life is intimate with the land, and even as an outsider, you can't help but feel part of the cycle. Planting, tending, and watching life grow in tandem with the sun and the river. You leave the rice fields behind and step onto the raised wooden walkway leading into the village proper, the planks creaking under your weight. Stilted houses rise above the damp ground, their dark timber walls polished by generations of hands, roofs thatched with palm leaves curling slightly at the edges. Smoke drifts lazily from small hearths beneath the houses, mingling with the scent of drying fish and fermenting rice. A child runs past, barefoot and laughing, their shadows stretching long across the sun-warmed stilts. The architecture is simple but clever. Elevated homes protect from floods, while gaps in walls and floors let air circulate freely. Historians still debate how much influence the empire's capital, Angkor, had on these rural designs, versus local ingenuity shaped by climate and necessity. Inside a home, you notice the layout is both practical and communal. Mats of woven reeds cover the floor, low tables hold bowls of rice and dried fish, and small shrines sit in a corner, adorned with fresh flowers and incense. The wooden beams are carved with subtle patterns, animals, geometric shapes, even occasional tiny human figures, that may have held symbolic meaning or just pleased the homeowner's eye. You reach out to touch a wall, noting the smooth polish from years of daily contact. Quirky tidbit. Some villagers hung tiny mirrors near the doorway, believing it would confuse wandering spirits or mischievous ghosts. You chuckle quietly, imagining a little ghost bumping into its own reflection. Outside, communal areas buzz with quiet life. Women pound rice in large mortars while chatting. Children weave simple toys from palm leaves, and an elder rests on a low bench, watching the world with a patient smile. You notice a small pile of clay pots beside the house, some cracked, some repaired with sticky resin, which hints at both scarcity and the value of craftsmanship. Villagers move fluidly between private and public spaces, blurring the line between home life and community obligations. It's intimate, messy, and surprisingly elegant in its functionality. The air carries faint sounds of livestock, chickens clucking, ducks waddling through mud, a water buffalo lowing in the distance. You pass by a raised granary, woven from bamboo, its roof slightly slanted to keep rain off. Rice stored here will feed the village through lean months, and the care taken in stacking and protecting it shows an unspoken reverence for sustenance. Some historians suggest that village architecture reflected not only practical concerns, but also subtle social hierarchies. Whose house was largest, whose granary nearest the water source, who maintained communal structures. You duck into a narrow alley between two homes, noticing the small workshops tucked under stilts, metalworkers shaping tools, weavers spinning thread, and a potter moulding clay. Smoke, dust, and the rich smell of wet earth mingle, creating an almost tangible texture to the village life. Children weave through these spaces without fear, stepping carefully yet confidently, learning the ropes of daily labour almost by osmosis. Quirky fringe fact: a few households kept tiny ornamental crocodiles as house guards, more superstition than security, but fascinating to imagine tiny reptiles scuttling under your feet. Evening light softens the timber walls, casting long shadows across walkways and fields beyond. You pause on a small bridge linking two stilted homes, watching a mother guide her child across while balancing a basket of fish on her head. The scene feels timeless. The gentle sway of the bridge, the rhythmic chatter of family members, the scent of smoke curling upward. The village isn't just a collection of homes, it's a living organism, each house, each path, each hearth pulse in sync with the others. You realize how architecture itself shapes life here, fostering interdependence and constant awareness of neighbours. By nightfall, the village glows with soft lamplight and the occasional flicker of fire from cooking hearths. Children settle near the central communal space, elders nod off against posts, and the faint smell of incense drifts from shrines tucked into corners. The elevated homes creak gently in the breeze, protecting those beneath from floods and pests, while simultaneously reminding everyone of their delicate balance with nature. You breathe in deeply, absorbing the wooden scent, the warmth of human activity, and the sense of continuity stretching back generations. Even as an outsider, you feel the quiet intimacy of life here, how every beam, mat, and roof tile tells stories of survival, ingenuity, and the oddly charming quirks that make each household unique. Stepping out of the stilted homes and into the village centre, you find yourself amidst the lively chaos of a market day. The air is thick with smells: roasted fish, pungent fermented shrimp paste, sweet tropical fruits, and the earthy aroma of fresh vegetables. Villagers chatter and barter in soft tones punctuated by laughter, the occasional call of a merchant. Oh, and the rhythmic slap of sandals against the dirt paths. Children weave between stalls, clutching small coins or trinkets, their eyes wide at the vibrant display. You probably won't survive long if you try haggling like a local, but watching is just as entertaining and far less stressful. Baskets overflow with goods, long stalks of lemongrass, bundles of fragrant herbs, clay pots, hand-woven mats, and colourful textiles that ripple like water in the breeze. Traders from nearby villages carry bamboo racks of pottery, while others arrive on small rafts, balancing fresh fish or grains. Scholars still debate how far inland these goods travelled before reaching provincial markets, but evidence suggests a surprisingly complex network connecting rural life to Angkor itself. You follow a vendor balancing a crate of small silver ornaments, noting the delicate workmanship and imagining the pride of the artisan who made them. Quirky tidbit: some villagers traded unusual items like powdered tortoiseshell, believed to have medicinal properties, or tiny carved wooden charms for luck. You can't help smiling at the thought of someone swapping a miniature wooden frog for a handful of rice. Even in these small markets, practicality mingles with superstition, and every transaction carries a tiny story beyond the simple exchange of goods. You wander past a stall where women expertly wrap sticky rice in banana leaves, chatting about harvest yields and the gossip of neighbouring villages. The aroma is irresistible, and you catch yourself sneaking a taste when no one is looking. Nearby, a man hammers thin sheets of copper into ornamental shapes, sparks glinting in the sunlight. Our children cluster around, mimicking the motions, while the craftsman chuckles, knowing the next generation is watching, learning, and perhaps secretly judging his technique. The market is also a hub for information, not just trade. Elders pass on news from distant villages, travellers share whispers of distant lands, and occasionally a travelling monk or scribe offers stories from Angkor's capital. Historians still argue how much influence these itinerant figures had on provincial culture, but it's clear that knowledge flowed alongside goods. You overhear a merchant recounting an odd tale of a rice field that supposedly grew golden stalks overnight. Probably more folklore than fact, but enchanting nonetheless. Barter is fluid. A basket of dried fish might be exchanged for woven mats, a handful of turmeric for a tiny clay pot. You watch a young girl carefully negotiate a trade, her expression serious but mischievous, clearly learning the subtle dance of give and take that will serve her for life. Laughter erupts frequently, as someone inevitably mispronounces a word or a duck waddles into the wrong stall, and you realize that this chaos is not disorganized. It's carefully orchestrated, a rhythm that villagers understand intuitively. By mid-afternoon, the market slows as the sun climbs high. Merchants pack up, children chase ducks one last time, and villagers settle debts or share leftover treats. You step aside, letting the bustle continue around you, noticing how interconnected everyone is: buyers, sellers, neighbours, travellers. Even the smallest trade carries social weight, reinforcing relationships, respect and reputation. You inhale the mingled scents of smoke, earth and spices, the sounds of laughter and chatter lingering in your ears, and feel the pulse of a community alive, grounded in commerce, curiosity and quiet, enduring camaraderie. You wander from the market's bustle toward a quieter part of the village, where small shrines and sacred corners punctuate the walkways. The scent of incense curls gently in the warm air, blending with the earthy aroma of mud, wood and ripening fruit. Women kneel at these miniature altars, hands pressed together, murmuring prayers for health, fertility or protection from wandering spirits. Men occasionally pause to toss coins or small offerings of rice. You probably won't survive long if you try to understand every ritual, but you can't help feeling a little charmed by the mix of devotion and playfulness that defines daily spiritual life. These shrines are often tucked into unexpected places, under a large tree, beside a well, or in a corner of someone's stilted house. Some display delicate statuettes of deities, while others hold carved animals or even miniature boats meant to carry offerings to the river spirits. Historians still argue whether the designs and placement of these shrines were centrally dictated by Khmer religious authorities or evolved locally over centuries. You notice the subtle variation from one household to another, a palm leaf here, a shell there, giving each shrine a personal, almost whimsical character. A curious fringe fact. Some villagers believed that whispering secrets to a small clay figurine of a tiger could protect their children from illness or mischief. You lean closer, half expecting the tiny tiger to growl at you, but it remains patiently inert, a silent guardian of imagination. Children giggle as they pass these shrines, sometimes adding tiny flowers or leaves in secret, participating in rituals before they even fully understand them. Daily religious practice often intertwines with practical life. A woman draws water for cooking while muttering blessings to the river spirits. A fisherman tosses a small piece of fish into the current before casting his net. The line between devotion and daily work blurs naturally, creating a rhythm that's both functional and sacred. You watch an elder burn incense and gently wave smoke over a rice pot, murmuring that it keeps food safe from evil spirits. Scholars still debate how literal villagers believed in these protections, but the rituals themselves are undeniably central to community cohesion. Festivals punctuate this rhythm, sometimes small, sometimes elaborate. You witness villagers decorating shrines with vibrant flowers, draping colourful fabrics, and singing quietly before larger celebrations. The air vibrates with chants, music, and the subtle tension of collective anticipation. Quirky tidbit. During certain festivals, some villagers wore masks of mythical creatures to trick bad spirits into leaving, often performing exaggerated dances that made outsiders giggle, unsure whether to be amused or slightly alarmed. Children often play near the shrines, mimicking adult rituals in their own curious way, touching incense sticks to flames, bowing at the statues, or leaving tiny offerings of rice. You notice how these small acts teach respect for the unseen, integrating spirituality into the tactile, messy life of the village. Smoke curls lazily, carrying prayers upward, and the afternoon light softens around the stilted homes, giving the entire scene a gentle, almost magical glow. By evening, most villagers gather near their household shrines to light candles or lamps, creating a soft constellation of tiny fires against the approaching dusk. The interplay of light and shadow, the murmured prayers, and the scent of burning incense makes the village feel suspended between the tangible world and the unseen. You inhale deeply, letting the rhythm of spiritual life mingle with the lingering sense of food, earth, and river. The Khmer provincial village is alive, not just in body, but in belief, imagination, and the shared heartbeat of devotion, quirkiness, and quiet reverence. You follow a narrow alley off the main walkway, drawn by the clinking and rhythmic tapping of hammers, the soft swish of weaving reeds, and the earthy scent of clay being moulded. Here, in the workshops tucked under stilted homes or beside open-air sheds, the village's artisans are at work, shaping objects that are both practical and beautiful. A potter presses and spins clay on a wheel, his fingers slick with mud, while a weaver carefully threads silk into a mat with intricate geometric patterns. Now, you probably won't survive trying all these crafts yourself. You'll get covered in clay or tangled in thread. But watching feels like entering a hidden world of patience, skill, and quiet pride. Some villagers hammer bronze into tools, decorative amulets, or small ritual objects. The clinking echoes softly against the wooden beams overhead, mixing with birdsong and the occasional bark of a dog. Children play nearby, observing and imitating the motions, learning the craft by watching, asking questions, and sometimes making tiny mistakes that elicit gentle laughter. Scholars still debate whether these artisan skills were taught primarily within families, or if travelling craftsmen circulated between villages to spread techniques. Either way, it's clear that craftwork shapes both economy and culture, anchoring provincial life in tangible skill. Quirky tidbit. Certain potters sometimes embedded tiny charms into clay pots, believing they would bring good luck or ward off river spirits. You peek inside one nearly finished pot and imagine the tiny hidden charm bouncing gently with the swirl of clay, like a secret whisper from the maker. Meanwhile, a basket weaver hums a soft tune, coordinating her hands with the rhythm of her song. You notice how sound, movement, and material flow together, creating both a sensory and meditative experience for the artisans. Weavers sit cross-legged on the ground, threading natural dyes into complex patterns on silk and cotton. The colours are astonishingly vibrant: deep indigo, burnt orange, muted greens, and each piece tells a story. A household's lineage, a festival, or perhaps a small myth reimagined in thread. Villagers display these weavings proudly, some for daily use, others for trade in the market. Historians still argue whether certain motifs originated from local imagination or were inspired by courtly designs from Angkor, but you can't help noticing the creativity and care that goes into each stitch. Metal workers hammer thin sheets of bronze or iron over anvils, sparks flying in a dance of light. You instinctively duck as a tiny spark lands near your sandal, heart skipping a beat, and the artisan laughs, shaking his head at your exaggerated caution. Quirky fringe fact: some blacksmiths in the provinces believed that singing to the metal while heating it improved its strength. So yes, you're witnessing a chorus of hammered bronze accompanied by soft vocalizations. It's equal parts industry and superstition, beauty and practicality, and strangely hypnotic to watch. Children continue to weave, mould and observe, sometimes carrying small clay figures to sell at the market or gifts for relatives. The workshops hum with quiet life, punctuated by laughter, clinks of metal and the earthy smell of damp clay. You notice the connection between these crafts and the village's broader economy. Each pot, mat or tool isn't just an object, it's a story, a livelihood, and a link in the complex chain of Khmer provincial life. As the sun lowers, shadows stretch across the workshop floors, casting patterns over the spinning wheels, woven mats and scattered tools. You step back to take it all in: the artistry, the care, the subtle interplay of daily life, labour and ritual. Each crafted item carries the fingerprints of history, imagination and human patience. In this small corner of the village, you sense the pulse of life, quiet, deliberate and quietly extraordinary, a rhythm that ties people to their land, their community, and even to each other through the shared act of creation. You hear the faint drumbeat before you see the gathering, a soft rhythm floating through the village as the sun leans toward the western horizon. Today is a festival day, a rare pause from the routines of rice fields, shrines and workshops. Villagers dress in brighter colours, some donning simple silk sashes, others wearing handmade masks of animals or mythical spirits. Children run ahead, scattering petals or waving small flags, their laughter blending with the cadence of drums and bamboo flutes. You probably won't survive trying to keep pace with their energy, but it's impossible not to be drawn into the flow, swept along by music, movement, and communal cheer. The festival unfolds across multiple spaces: a clearing near the river, the steps of a larger communal hall, and the small shrines tucked among stilted homes. Music fills each corner, both live and improvised. You watch as villagers perform traditional dances, their feet kicking up dust, hands gesturing elegantly to invisible stories, and faces alight with concentration and joy. Historians still argue whether some of these dances trace directly back to royal court ceremonies in Angkor, or evolved locally over generations, but either way, they are mesmerizing, a living link between empire and province. A quirky tidbit: one dance involves wearing wooden masks of crocodiles while mimicking their supposed courtship rituals, complete with mock snarls and exaggerated tail swishes. Children mimic the adults, crawling and hopping in earnest, creating a scene that's equal parts hilarious and oddly graceful. You chuckle quietly, careful not to step on the little ones who are just as determined to perform as the elders. Alongside the dancing, communal games draw small crowds. Villagers test their strength in tug-of-war matches, race along narrow bamboo bridges, or balance on slippery poles over shallow water. Laughter rises like bubbles from the muddy stream below. Women hand out sticky rice wrapped in banana leaves, and you sneak a bite. It's sweet, slightly savoury, and perfect for sustaining festival energy. Some historians suggest that these playful competitions doubled as training for agricultural or military skills, though there's debate over how intentional the connection was. Food stalls line the edges of the festival grounds, selling small roasted fish, fragrant rice cakes, and drinks flavoured with palm sugar and local herbs. You watch a woman carefully roll sticky rice into tiny balls, offering them to passers-by with a wink. Children gather around, hands outstretched, while elders nod approvingly, occasionally murmuring blessings for a good harvest or protection from mischievous spirits. Quirky fringe fact: in some villages, people released small clay boats with lit candles into nearby streams during the festival, believing it would carry away minor misfortunes or attract luck, glimmering like tiny floating stars against the river's reflection. As afternoon turns to evening, the festival slows but doesn't stop. Firelight flickers across dancing faces, shadows stretching over the ground like living murals. Music softens, games wind down, and families gather near communal hearths to share food and stories. You notice subtle acts of social bonding, the elder giving a knowing glance to a young couple, children carefully helping one another, neighbours sharing a laugh over a minor mishap. These rituals, both big and small, are the glue of village life, reinforcing relationships, values and joy in ways that transcend words. By twilight, the festival grounds glow with lamps and torches. The scent of incense mixes with roasted fish, sweet rice, and the earthy aroma of the damp ground. Music and laughter fade gradually, leaving behind a sense of contentment and gentle energy lingering in the air. You inhale deeply, letting the warmth, colours and sounds of communal celebrations settle in your memory. Festivals in Khmer provincial life aren't merely entertainment. They're a living, breathing affirmation of community, continuity, and the small, joyful pulse of human connection woven seamlessly into the rhythms of daily life. You follow a narrow path from the festival clearing toward a quieter part of the village, where children are gathered near the raised schoolhouse and open spaces for learning. Some sit cross-legged on woven mats, copying Khmer script onto palm leaves with tiny brushes dipped in ink, while others chase each other between the stilts, laughing, carrying the occasional stray chicken or stick like trophies. You probably won't survive keeping up with their energy, but it's charming to watch how learning and play intertwine seamlessly here. Historians still debate how formal education in the provinces compared to instruction in Angkor, but it's clear that children absorb knowledge both from elders and by simply observing daily life. Some children learn practical skills from their parents: weaving, pottery, fishing, or helping with irrigation channels. A boy carries a small water basket carefully along the muddy edge of a paddy, while his sister steadies a basket of seedlings, giggling when a tiny fish jumps from the water. You notice how education here isn't confined to classrooms. It happens at hearths, in fields, and along riverbanks. Quirky tidbit: some children were taught basic survival skills by playing miniature hunter games, using sticks to imitate spears or nets, believing it prepared them for future fishing trips or defense against small predators. In the schoolhouse, a local teacher, a kindly elder with ink-stained fingers, guides children through lessons in literacy, arithmetic, and oral history. They recite myths of gods and heroes, tales of spirits in the forest, and even humorous anecdotes about the king's antics in Angkor, which sometimes elicit giggles at the expense of authority. Scholars still argue how standardized these lessons were, or if every village relied solely on oral traditions, but the effect is clear. Knowledge passes from generation to generation, blending practical, spiritual, and cultural learning into a rich tapestry. Play continues outside, often overlapping with instruction. Children learn rhythm, coordination, and observation by mimicking adult chores in miniature, ploughing with small wooden tools, stacking tiny bundles of rice stalks, or carrying water in scaled-down baskets. Some children even participate in small rituals, lighting incense or offering flowers at household shrines under watchful eyes. Quirky fringe fact: it was common for children to talk to the rice in the paddies, singing or whispering encouragement, a ritual meant to encourage growth just as adults did, though you suspect they do it mostly because it makes the day more fun. Midday arrives with a warm sun and the soft hum of insects. Lessons pause briefly for meals. Sticky rice, small fish, and seasonal greens eaten quickly but with care, or children chatter about what they saw at the festival, about their chores, or about curious stories from neighbouring villages. You notice the blend of structured learning, spontaneous exploration, and social bonding. The village is its own classroom, alive with examples of history, ecology and culture, all taught experientially. By late afternoon, children's energy wanes slightly, but curiosity persists. Some quietly practice calligraphy on palm leaves, while others help elders with minor tasks, sweeping, fetching water, or checking small livestock. You watch a child teach a younger sibling the basics of weaving a straw mat, correcting a crooked stitch with gentle guidance. The sun casts long shadows across the schoolhouse and Paddies, softening edges, creating a warm, golden glow that seems to hold the day in suspension. You inhale the mixed scents of earth, ink and river water, feeling the pulse of learning, play and growth in the air. The Khmer provincial childhood is less about formal schooling and more about living fully, observing deeply and participating actively in village life. By evening, as shadows stretch and children's laughter slows, you notice a quiet sense of accomplishment and belonging, each child embedded in a web of family, culture and nature that will shape them for life. In this way, education here is not a set of lessons, but a living rhythm, a seamless thread woven through daily experience, curiosity and gentle guidance. You step into the dimly lit corner of the village, where the scent of herbs, smoke and damp earth mingles, a subtle reminder that health and healing are woven into daily life. Midwives, herbalists, and elders move with quiet purpose, tending to the sick, guiding childbirth, and sharing remedies passed down for generations. You probably won't survive attempting to mix the right concoction yourself. Some remedies involve odd combinations like crushed insects or river herbs, but observing feels like stepping into a world where life, death and superstition exist side by side. Historians still argue how standardized medical knowledge was across villages, but the evidence of skilled care is unmistakable. Women grind roots and leaves into powders or pastes, murmuring protective chants over the mixtures. Men occasionally administer poultices or massage strained muscles with oil infused with local herbs. Children watch in fascination, learning which plants can soothe fevers or repel insects. Quirky tidbit: some villagers believe that hanging a clay frog upside down in a home could prevent stomachaches, a practice both baffling and oddly charming to outsiders. You can't help smiling at the thought of tiny clay guardians guarding bellies as well as spirits. Midwives guide expectant mothers through labour with careful instruction, herbal teas, and supportive chants. You notice how communal childbirth strengthens social bonds. The entire village feels invested in new life, and rituals often accompany the delivery, from prayers at household shrines to sprinkling scented water over mother and child. Scholars still debate whether these practices were primarily spiritual, hygienic, or both, but the outcome is a deep integration of health, ritual, and community. In addition to childbirth, villagers treat common ailments, minor cuts, fevers, stomach pains, or insect bites. Some remedies are surprisingly effective, like certain herbal teas for digestive issues or poultices that reduce swelling. Others, more fringe, involve charms, whispered spells, or river rituals intended to shift misfortune. Quirky fringe fact: some believed that applying a mixture of water, buffalo dung, and ash to mosquito bites would not only relieve itching, but also transfer the bite's ill luck to the paste. You recoil slightly, then admire the creativity and resourcefulness behind it. You move to a small hut where a healer tends to a minor injury, guiding the patient with gentle hands and soft-spoken instructions. Smoke curls from a nearby incense burner, intended to drive away lingering spirits that might infect the wound. Herbs hang drying from beams overhead, leaves of turmeric, bundles of lemongrass, and strings of fragrant flowers. Children peek in from the doorway, eyes wide, sometimes mimicking the healer's gestures with imaginary patience. You notice how education in medicine is deeply social. Learning comes from watching, doing, and participating in a network of observation, storytelling, and ritual. Throughout the day, you see how belief and practicality coexist. A simple bandage might be wrapped with a whispered charm, a fever treated with herbal tea, and a ritual performed to keep bad luck at bay. The villagers' approach to health is holistic, blending observation, experience, and tradition, with plenty of room for local quirks and creativity. Historians still argue whether some practices originated from courtly medicine in Angkor or were purely local innovations, but either way, yet they reflect a nuanced understanding of the body, environment, and unseen forces. By evening, the village is quieter. The scent of herbs and smoke lingers in the air, children's curiosity wanes, and caretakers tidy workspaces. You notice how subtly the daily rhythms of health intertwine with labour, education, and ritual. Even something as mundane as treating a cut becomes a window into culture, belief, and ingenuity. You inhale deeply, letting the mingling smells of earth, herbs, and fire settle, realizing that Khmer provincial life is as much about careful stewardship of the body and spirit as it is about rice, river, or craft. The quiet dedication of these healers, their knowledge, and their small quirks leave a lasting imprint, a gentle pulse of care running through village life. You step toward the outskirts of the village where a subtle tension underlies daily life, a reminder that even in these serene provincial communities, the presence of soldiers and local defence shapes routines. Soldiers in simple uniforms patrol occasionally, overseeing river crossings or village entrances, their presence quiet but unmistakable. You probably won't survive attempting to argue with one of them or sneak past their posts, but you can observe how their role blends into the rhythm of the village, less about fear and more about structure. Historians still debate how extensive military oversight was in rural areas versus ceremonial or seasonal patrols, but evidence suggests villagers were acutely aware of their authority. A young recruit demonstrates drills near a cluster of houses, his movements precise but stiff, earning smirks from children who mimic his gestures in exaggerated playful fashion. Meanwhile, elders negotiate minor disputes or organize village work, subtly balancing the influence of soldiers with local governance. You notice how discipline and communal life coexist, sometimes harmoniously, sometimes with friction. Quirky tidbit: soldiers sometimes carried tiny charms or amulets believed to protect them from arrows or river spirits, proof that superstition permeated even the most official aspects of life. Defense extends beyond patrols. Villagers maintain watchposts, sharpen bamboo stakes along riverbanks, and practice basic drills during festival days or seasonal threats. Even children participate in miniature versions, running mock attacks with sticks or reed spears, blending play and preparation. Scholars still argue whether these exercises were primarily symbolic, educational, or practically functional, but they clearly reinforce communal responsibility and alertness. You can't help smiling as a small child proudly parades with a stick, imagining herself as a seasoned guard. Occasionally, the presence of soldiers influences trade and transport. Riverboats might be inspected, and local markets subtly regulated to ensure taxes or tribute are noted and collected. Yet the villagers manage to weave this oversight seamlessly into daily life, negotiating the subtle balance between authority and autonomy. Quirky fringe fact: some soldiers were rumoured to consult local shamans before setting out on patrols, seeking protection from unseen forces, a blending of superstition, military routine, and rural culture that seems both practical and endearingly odd. By afternoon, the patrols relax, children resume playful drills, and villagers continue chores as if the soldiers are another layer of the landscape, present, noticeable, but not intrusive. You see how social hierarchy and defence coexist. Villagers respect authority yet maintain traditions, play, and routines that subtly assert local control. Even the smallest household participates, passing down knowledge of which river crossings are safe when patrols visit and how to handle minor conflicts. As the sun dips low, shadows stretch across fields, homes, and the occasional guard post. Soldiers pause to rest, villagers settle into their work, and the river reflects the muted gold of evening light. You inhale deeply, are feeling the pulse of structure and vigilance woven into everyday life. Khmer provincial communities thrive on cooperation, awareness, and subtle negotiation between neighbours, between villagers and authorities, and between humans and the environment. Even the presence of soldiers, far from frightening, forms part of the rhythm, a quiet reminder of protection, order, and the delicate balance that sustains life along rivers, fields, and stilted homes. You leave the village behind for a while, wandering along the edges of rice paddies and the fringes of dense forests, following narrow footpaths that twist alongside irrigation canals and meandering streams. The air is fragrant with damp earth, flowering shrubs, and the occasional pungent tang of fish from nearby waterways. Birds call overhead, frogs croak in hidden pools, and a gentle breeze carries the hum of insects. You probably won't survive trying to track all the wildlife or memorize every edible plant, but observing is enough to feel the intimate connection villagers have with their environment. Historians still argue whether these practices stemmed primarily from local knowledge or were influenced by imperial directives, but the evidence of careful observation and adaptation is everywhere. Villagers interact with their surroundings constantly. They guide water buffalo along muddy trails, check irrigation channels, and harvest reeds, fruits, and fish. You notice small fish traps set in shallow streams, often paired with tiny offerings to river spirits, blending utility with superstition. Quirky tidbit. Some villagers believed that whistling while planting seedlings could summon helpful rain clouds or scare away mischievous forest spirits. You pause to try it, feeling slightly ridiculous, yet imagining that the plants, animals, and humans all participate in a subtle, ongoing conversation. The forest edges are alive with foraging activity. Women gather medicinal herbs, nuts, and mushrooms, carefully distinguishing the edible from the poisonous. Children follow, learning to identify plants, insects, and tracks left by small animals. Men occasionally hunt birds or trap small game, moving quietly, aware of wind direction and animal habits. Scholars still debate how formalized knowledge of local ecology was versus inherited through observation, but each step, each glance, each sound teaches a lesson in survival. Sustainability and balance. Waterways are lifelines. Villagers navigate them daily, not just for fishing but also for irrigation, transport, and communication with neighboring settlements. Ducks swim freely, and you watch as a group of children carefully herd a few back to the village pen, giggling when one escapes. Quirky fringe fact. In some areas, villagers place small clay figurines along canal banks to encourage fish to return after seasonal migrations, a practice that seems whimsical, yet demonstrates an early understanding of ecosystem management. The interplay of human activity and environment is subtle but profound. Irrigation dikes carefully redirect seasonal floods to nourish paddies, while forest clearance and foraging are performed judiciously to prevent soil erosion and preserve resources. You pause to watch a small heron stalk along a canal, perfectly still, as a fisherman gently lifts a net nearby. Both human and wildlife movements reflect a delicate negotiation, coexistence born from centuries of observation, trial, and adaptation. By late afternoon, the sun casts long shadows across the fields and forest edges. Water glows like molten gold, the wind stirs reeds, and you notice how villagers' lives are synced with these natural rhythms. Paths, paddies, and canals are not just routes or resources. They are classrooms, playgrounds, and sacred spaces all at once. Every interaction, planting rice, guiding buffalo, foraging herbs, is an ongoing dialogue with the environment. You inhale deeply, letting the scents, sounds, and sensations embed themselves. Khmer provincial life depends on this intimate understanding of ecology, a balance of practical management, ritual observance, and the occasional playful superstition that keeps humans attuned to the living world around them. You return to the heart of the village, noting the subtle rhythms of social life as elders convene beneath the largest stilted home, discussing disputes, labor rotations, and seasonal preparations. The air is warm, filled with the earthy smell of wood, smoke, and dust kicked up by children playing nearby. You probably won't survive trying to grasp all the nuances of hierarchy here. It's a delicate dance of respect, obligation, and subtle authority. But watching reveals how governance and social order are woven seamlessly into daily routines. Historians still debate whether local leaders derived their authority directly from Angkor or evolved more autonomously within each community, but the influence of structure is unmistakable. Village elders sit cross-legged, exchanging soft words that carry weight, while younger men and women hang slightly back, offering input only when necessary. The interplay is delicate, respect is paramount, but clever suggestions and subtle humour occasionally slip through. Quirky tidbit: some elders carried small carved tokens, sometimes shaped like animals or symbols, that they used to signal decisions or mark responsibilities, a sort of informal currency of influence. You notice a child sneakily watching the proceedings, learning the unspoken rules of power that will guide them as they grow. Households align themselves socially as well as spatially. Larger homes, proximity to communal structures, or the placement of shrines often reflects subtle hierarchies, while labour tasks, festivals and irrigation duties are coordinated to reinforce communal balance. Women, men and children all understand their roles, negotiating obligations with smiles, teasing, or quiet obedience. Scholars still argue how much of this hierarchy was formally codified versus organically emergent, but it's clear that villagers internalize these dynamics from an early age. You notice that influence extends beyond words. Decisions about crop rotations, water distribution, and festival organization are enforced socially, with elders observing, guiding, and occasionally correcting missteps. Quirky fringe fact: some villages maintained tiny ceremonial courtrooms under large trees, where minor disputes were settled with symbolic gestures like tossing a pebble or reciting a rhyme, blending ritual, authority, and entertainment. Watching these proceedings, you marvel at the creativity and subtlety of governance here. Even children begin learning the contours of social order through play. Tug-of-war games at festivals, mock council meetings with sticks and leaves, or simply mimicking adult interactions, all teach lessons in hierarchy, negotiation, and community cohesion. The lessons are experiential, reinforced daily through observation and gentle correction. You watch a young girl adjust another child's posture in line with an elder's instructions, an unconscious rehearsal of the social dynamics that govern her world. By late afternoon, the village hums with quiet order. Work continues, meals are prepared, and communal tasks are completed with an unspoken rhythm that reflects collective understanding. The elders rise, signalling the end of formal discussion, and villagers resume daily chores, laughter, and play. You inhale deeply, sensing the subtle power structures at work, the gentle push and pull of respect, cooperation, and hierarchy that sustain life. Khmer provincial governance is less about formal decrees and more about lived practice, a tapestry of tradition, observation, and interpersonal skill. Watching it unfold, you feel the delicate balance that enables a community to thrive, harmonizing authority, obligation, and warmth into a seamless rhythm of village life. You linger as the sun dips low, painting the stilted homes and rice paddies in soft gold and rose, signaling the slow descent of day into evening. Villagers move with deliberate calm now. Children retrieve wandering ducks. Elders close small storage huts, and smoke curls from hearths as families prepare evening meals. You probably won't survive trying to speed up this gentle pace. It's meant to soothe, not hurry. But watching reminds you how Khmer provincial life transitions seamlessly from labour to rest. Historians still debate how much these evening rituals were dictated by natural light versus social custom, but the pattern is unmistakably comforting. Along the riverbank, women carry water for cooking, their movements almost meditative. Men tend fires, carefully checking embers for cooking or for warmth, while children play quietly, their laughter softer now, like ripples fading on the surface of the tonal sap. Quirky tidbit: some households place tiny clay lamps near doorways, believing the light would guide spirits to peaceful sleep rather than mischief, an odd but charming echo of the day's earlier superstitions. You pause, imagining a small network of glowing lamps scattered across the village, each holding a tiny promise of safety, warmth, and comfort. Evening shrines glow gently in the twilight, incense smoke curling lazily skyward. You watch villagers bow in quiet reflection, whispering thanks or petitions, reinforcing the rhythm of life as it slows down. Festivals, labour, schooling, and daily chores recede into memory, replaced by the tactile, sensory pulse of twilight. Soft shadows, warm air, distant croaks of frogs, and the gentle lapping of river water against wooden stilts. Scholars still debate the symbolic versus practical origins of these nightly rituals, but their calming effect is undeniable. You walk past small gardens where herbs and flowers release their fragrances in the cooler air. Water buffalo return from fields. Guided gently by children, their slow movements are counterpoint to the day's energetic rhythms. A soft breeze carries the mingling smells of cooking, river water, and wet earth, layering sensory notes like a lullaby. Quirky fringe fact: in some villages, families would whisper goodnight to their rice paddies, believing that speaking softly would ensure a prosperous harvest, a charming mix of ritual and reverence that seems almost playful to outsiders. As darkness falls, the village glows faintly with the scattered light of lamps and fires. You notice villagers gathering near hearths, sharing small stories, and listening to the subtle evening sounds, the rustle of leaves, distant croaks, and the occasional splash of fish. Life here transitions without urgency. The village exhales after the day's activities, is settling into a shared rhythm of calm and warmth. You inhale deeply, the earthy, smoky and sweet scents embedding themselves in memory, feeling the quiet pulse of community and environment intertwined. The final light fades, leaving a gentle shimmer across the river and fields. You take a moment to absorb the interconnectedness of all you've witnessed: the river, the rice fields, the homes, the market, the crafts, festivals, education, health, military presence, environmental care, and governance, all converging in this peaceful provincial evening. Khmer life, in all its complexity, ends the day as it began, in harmony with nature, steeped in tradition and punctuated by gentle human quirkiness. You feel the lull of twilight, the warmth of hearths, and the collective exhale of a village settling into night. And, this calm is both ordinary and extraordinary. The last embers of day flicker softly, glowing like tiny lanterns in the darkened village. You settle on the riverbank, feeling the warmth of the fading sun on your skin, listening to the gentle chorus of crickets, frogs, and the occasional splash of a fish breaking the water's surface. Smoke from distant hearths drifts lazily, curling into the sky, carrying the scent of cooking, incense, and earth, a comforting mixture that seems to hold the day in its quiet folds. Your eyes follow the shimmer of lamplight on stilts, the silhouettes of homes stretching into the distance, and the glimmer of tiny clay lamps flickering in doorways, each one a small beacon of calm and continuity. The river mirrors the night sky, rippling gently as stars begin to emerge, tiny points of light reflecting both in water and imagination. You inhale deeply, letting the cool, humid air settle in your lungs, feeling the gentle rhythm of the village pulse in time with your own heartbeat. Memories of market chatter, laughter, drums, dancing, and the quiet diligence of daily life float around you, settling softly into the corners of your mind. Even the quirky charms, clay frogs, and whispered rice prayers now feel like a lullaby, weaving a thread of continuity between the ordinary and the magical. The village exhales with you, the warmth of fire and human presence softening the edges of the world. Each path, home, shrine, and field becomes part of a larger tapestry of life that is both enduring and ephemeral. As night deepens, the sensory tapestry fades into quiet. Soft croaks, gentle rustles, and the distant lapping of river water. Your eyelids grow heavy, each breath sinking with the calm rhythm of the province, the world shrinking to the comforting glow of embers and lamplight. Now, with the last warmth of day surrounding you, and the gentle chorus of night humming softly, you feel yourself drifting. The sights, smells, and sounds of Khmer provincial life settle into memory, and the day's pulse slows to a whisper. Your body softens, your mind quiets, and the glow of fire, river, and hearth lulls you gently toward dreams. Good night, sweet dreams.